Friends, I have bad news. It turns out that despite all of my best efforts, I'm short. So I might have to get in here.
Hello from the future. I'm glad to tell you that it's warmed up in here and I can finally take my jacket off. Don't worry, you'll get that later.
To be honest, I'm kind of nervous. What if I started and nothing has changed? Guess there's only one way to know.
But I am not impervious to bullying, or perhaps convincing, as some may put it. I have decided to add a tool to my arsenal. Welcome back to Skelly's Garage. My name is Sam, and this is the 2006 BMW X5 with more than 250,000 miles on it. And in this episode, we're going to do some work to it. Now, if you haven't seen any of the previous episodes on this car, you can do so in this playlist. But in September of last year, so 6 months ago, the X5 stopped running correctly. And I've done a lot of work to it to try to fix it and get it back to what it usually is, which is an extremely reliable machine that I've used for many, many years. However, it has proven to be a challenge. Nothing that I've done to this car has quite fixed it. But I am nothing if not a determined boy, and this is a car that I really, really do like. And I bought it so that I could drive it, not so that it could just sit in my garage. I hope that the comprehensive looky-loo that we're gonna do will give us some answers. But I guess we'll see.
None of the testing that I've done has been conclusive in any real way. I've done a compression test, which was fine, and I've done a leak down test, which was also fine. So what we're left with is really no option except to do exploratory surgery. So what I have to do now is I have to take off the intake manifold, examine every single piece one by one, and we're gonna see if there is something broken. I really wasn't looking forward to doing something like that because it's the least efficient way of fixing a problem, but I'm kind of left with no other choice. So let's get to it. I'm gonna put these back in their place. That's off. Ooh, I smell gas. That's interesting. Why? It's like there's a little gremlin that steals my frickin' extensions. It's really helpful to have a magnet, especially when you're working on anything related to the intake manifold. Don't want to lose those bolts. That's the DC valve disconnected. Usually comes out peacefully. And this, if you recall, is a brand new DC valve, which I may or may not have included the footage for. Before we go any further, I want to take off all this section here so that I can pop this out, because I have some new parts to put on. Look at how much more space we have now. Look at all that. We get all the way back there if we needed to. We don't, but if we did. I've heard people ask, what do you do with an 11mm socket? Through all my time working on cars, I have really only found two uses for the 11mm socket. The nuts on the intake are 11mm, and also the nuts on the exhaust are 11mm. As far as I can immediately think of, that's it. Nothing else. Just those two applications. I'm sure somebody in the comments will tell me that I'm dead wrong, but that's okay, because that boosts engagement. So to remove this injector harness from the injectors, you have to unclip it with these tiny, tiny little clips, which I'm sure you can't even see right now. So here's the deal. These springs hold this injector harness, this guy, to the injectors. They're the ones that send an electrical pulse to tell the injectors to fire and provide fuel to the engine. These clips have to be removed for the injector harness to come out. Sometimes they'll come off peacefully, but other times they will do so in such an extravagant fashion that you will never find them again. Friends, I have bad news. It turns out that despite all of my best efforts, I'm short. So I might have to get in here. all the springs accounted for. That is a negative. We did lose one. That sucks. What are you gonna do? Now that the injector harness is out of the way, let's move the fuel rail. You're gonna make me do manual labor. Unbelievable. Woo, baby. Those look like good injectors to you? Look at that. We might have some new injectors coming up. Let's get the intake off, and we'll sort the rest of that out.
You might be wondering, why am I using a magnet for nuts that are obviously so easy to just get to? Once upon a time, long ago, when Dog the E30 was still a car that I primarily worked on, it had a custom intake manifold on it. And that custom intake manifold was very painful to remove. And the reason it was so painful to remove was because if you did not use a magnet when removing the nuts on the intake manifold, you would lose the nut. And after losing more than a few, I decided that anytime I'm taking nuts off near an intake of any sort, I'd rather just use a magnet. Okay, now I get to find out all the stuff that I forgot to disconnect. I forgot all about this. Are we finally free? No, we're not. Do this very carefully. If you didn't disconnect your battery, because you don't want it to touch something that it shouldn't. All right, so here is our intake manifold. Now, I mentioned as I was taking this off that there are a few bits and pieces on here that we definitely want to check out and make sure that they're still working correctly. First area of concern is this fellow right here. It is the intake idle air control valve, and if it's stuck, which they tend to be after a certain age, then it can affect performance. Fascinating news. This seems to be stuck. Even though this is stuck, I don't think this is our problem. I think this is a problem that we are going to solve. To fix a stuck idle air control valve, all you need is a can of brake cleaner and a can-do attitude. Take it to a well-ventilated area, perhaps outside, and spray the cleaner into the valve. Once it's filled up, shake the IACV until it starts making noises. Repeat a few times until the valve is completely free. It should sound like this. Now, back to the intake manifold. Important thing to do is these vacuum caps, they tend to deteriorate. I already replaced 2 of them. This is just me replacing the 3rd. Give it a little bit of lubrication. Get that. So a few moments ago for you, and 2 days ago for me, I was talking about the importance of using magnets when you're taking hardware off around sensitive areas, such as an intake manifold. Indeed, it is very important to use magnets when you're removing hardware from things so important as an intake manifold, like this one. What's that, you might say? What's that rattling noise? What could that possibly be? Well, if there's another hint that I've shared on this channel, it's that once you take a bolt off from someplace, it's usually a good idea to put it back, if you can. Like, for example, right here is where the DISA valve goes. The DISA valve is attached by these 2 tiny little fasteners. Once I remove the DISA valve, I put the bolts right back. Under the DISA valve is another little bracket that holds the idle air control valve, which I already talked about. I removed those with using a magnet. However, when trying to put it back, I dropped it. And that's what that is. And I can't get it out. I've tried so hard. I've tried so hard to get this stupid thing out. And maybe one day I'll be able to get it out. But at the moment, I'm not counting on that. So I called around to a few scrapyards, and one of them has an intake manifold for me. Unfortunately, due to some weather concerns, it won't be available until 2 days from today. So I'm going to spend a few minutes trying to get it out with a magnet. And if I'm able to, then we'll be in great shape. If not, then I'm going to go pick up that intake manifold, and then, we'll put it on later. The task that is ahead of us is to use these magnets, or maybe if not these magnets, then I have some other ones, to see if we can try to negotiate this bolt's passage out of this complex plastic maze that I can obviously not take apart any further than it is. Where's my light? There it is. Really? This doesn't come apart, right? No, it's glued. Holy shit! I got it! Wow, I can't believe that actually. I don't know what to say to that. This intake manifold is now usable again. I'm still going to do a thorough cleaning of it before I put it back on, because there's a lot of what you might call detritus. I spent like 2 days just thinking about what a mess I had made, and now I'm gonna have to buy a new intake manifold and all that, but luck is on our side. Anyway, through the magic of video editing, we're gonna skip around in time a little bit. I'll see you soon. Hello from the future. I'm glad to tell you that it's warmed up in here and I can finally take my jacket off. Don't worry, you'll get that later. Anyway, as I said earlier, I am not quite tall enough to work on some of the deep parts of the engine bay, so I have come up with a solution. This spare tire. Now, I'm not telling you this for any particular reason, just because I thought you'd find it funny. Anyway, let's get to installing the intake manifold, the cleaned idle air control valve, and all the other nonsense that the intake manifold is comprised of. So before putting the intake manifold back on the car, we have to reinstall the CCV system. Now, CCV it's an air oil separator. Basically, the premise is that as the engine runs, gases from the crankcase get pulled out through the valve cover, separated into air and oil. Oil goes back to the oil pan, air gets consumed by the intake. This is kind of a finicky system, but it is relatively new. I replaced it last winter, and from everything that I have been able to tell, it looks like it's still in pretty good shape. It's really only held into place with 2 fasteners. This is absolutely one of those things that I have no idea what the torque spec is. I know it's not much because you're going into plastic here, so you don't want to overdo it. I'd feel better if we used the magnet. Grab one of the CCV hoses. There we go. You push it in place until you hear the click. Then you can flip the intake manifold over. As you can see, each side has a port, and those correspond with the CCV hoses. I've actually found that it's easier to attach the hoses first. There we go. That's the noise we wanted to hear. All right, that's this. I don't know what it's called, but whatever it's called, that's that mounted. I just have to put the screws in. And again, I just tighten these until they bottom out. I have some words about this CCV system. I think that the way that BMW designed it, it's just not great, honestly. I know it's a sensitive topic, especially for people who like these engines, myself included. I wish that they had stuck to a previous design. The reason that this has to be insulated is because it's so far from any of the heat of the engine that it's producing, it actually freezes up. It has the potential to do so. And that causes problems, severe problems, hydrolock problems. I'll get off my soapbox now. I'm not super pleased with how gross the throttle body is. I'm gonna go clean this. Now, unfortunately, Somewhere along the line, BMW stopped making these serviceable. So really all that you can do if one of these throttle bodies is starting to act out is replace it, which I don't want to do. Because the old throttle bodies, you could take them apart and clean the internals. With these ones, you can't. So I'm going to clean this on up a little bit more, and then we're just going to reattach it and see if it works. This is as far as we're going to go. New L-ring throttle body gasket. Okay, that's sorted. Throttle body is done. We can put that to the side. The next item on our list is the idle air control valve. Now working. Brand new idle air control valve. Idle air control valve grommet. They've been clever here. There's a notch in the intake manifold that lines up with a notch in the grommet. Number one, I'm so scared of these bolts now because of how much time they cost me before. These are torqued to 7 Newton meters, which is basically nothing. And since I don't have a torque wrench that goes that low, we will just barely snug it. Take manifold gasket, you're my gasket, you're the wrong side. Intake manifold gasket. Same thing on the other bank of cylinders. Unless I'm forgetting something, we are ready to go to the front of the car. Right then, let's start connecting stuff. Let's go. Don't shock me, don't shock me. Honestly, me, I couldn't care about it. Because, like, what's 12 volts between friends, you know? But, I would hate to have to buy a new wiring harness. Don't worry if you can't see anything. I can't either, so. Sorry, I'm gonna need to borrow this for a moment.
It was getting pretty late in the day, and I didn't want to risk making a costly mistake from being tired. So I decided to go home and sleep. But before we can see the next day, we actually need to travel 4 days ahead. I told you this episode's going to have weird time warps.
Now, as I've mentioned before, I have very limited space here in this garage, which means that the more things that I buy to do the things that I need to do, the less organized it can really be. And, well, it's never really been organized. One day I dream of having perhaps a garage or a shed that is entirely mine to use, and then I can arrange my things the way that I see fit. Until such a day comes, I have to deal with what I have. But I am not impervious to bullying, or perhaps convincing, as some may put it. Thanks to certain comments by certain viewers, I have decided to add a tool to my arsenal. This is a Stanley shop vac. It's not very large. Hopefully it's not very loud, because I don't want to make a tremendous amount of noise in this garage, because, as you can probably imagine, things echo in here, and people live above where I am right now. At least now I'll be able to clean up the leaves and other fun things that wind up on or around my cars in critical areas, and make for some really satisfying shots.
Great news. I've had a chance to go home and sleep. While I was sleeping, I had a chance to think about this car and think about the things that I was doing last night. What I have decided was that I'm going to actually take the intake manifold back off, vacuum it out, and then I'm going to put it back. Alright, now let's reconnect everything. CCV is in place. There's the click. And we're ready to party. Alright, intake manifold is back on. There's our other click. Oh yeah. Remember how this just failed last night? Purge valve connected. Idle air control connected. Throttle body connected. Alright, so we're back where we started like 2 minutes ago. That wasn't too bad. Okay, let's
tighten down the intake manifold. We need our friend the magnet. If you're very clever with your magnet, you can actually kind of use the magnet to start spinning the nut onto the stud, which is what I was just able to accomplish there. So that was pretty cool. There's so much slop. There's so much side-to-side slop here. That's what's wrong. I no longer feel safe using that torque wrench unless it's immediately on something. Manifold is back on. Now let's put on the fuel rail. So each one of these injectors has like a little slice in it, really. And you align the little slice in the injector with one of these ridges, and then this cutout goes against the outer rim of the fuel rail. The more you know. Injector wiring harness back on. This one is easy, you just kind of sort of push it in until you hear it click. Now we take connector from the injector wiring harness, connect it to the van house on one side, the intake air temperature on the other side, like that. It's all very straightforward. Fuel rail, injector harness is connected. All that is correct. We're looking good. So we need to put the DC in. Before we put the new DC in, we have to make sure that this is tight, because otherwise we will never be able to get it. Okay. I have no idea what you're seeing. I mean, like, I can see the camera, I can see what it's displaying, but it's a little bit far for me to be able to tell. Now we can finally put the DC valve in. Remember how I told you that this is broken? Well, it is. Here's a new one. So here's why I bought a new one. Atop this plastic strip sits a weather seal. But much like on this one, that ridge is broken. Or was broken, rather. So I bought a new one of these. I will probably replace this one as well. It was really back-ordered. This one only took 3 weeks to ship. I can't imagine how long it would take for me to get that one. I might get that one, you know, just in time for 2026, so. I think my ears started bleeding. That was really cool. That was so bad. I couldn't even think. Like, why is this happening to me? Now that the new panel is on, why don't we do a bit of vac? Brand new Corteco air filter. These components, one of them was missing and the other one was broken, so I bought new ones. They go over here next to the cabin air filter element. Next we put this in, but I want to do something first. I want to clean the mass airflow sensor. We just need a screwdriver to remove it from the rest of the intake piping, so it should come off. This is very often the only flat surface that I have. Alright, we're just going to let that dry. Oh, now you're talking. You got so much to say, huh? It's the beauty panels. And oh my, do they add beauty.
Now that is a beautiful engine covered.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that segment. I haven't recorded it yet. Now, I think we're all in for a shock. Perhaps even two. This car needs shocks and a lot of other things in the rear suspension. When I first bought it, like most E53s, had a number of issues with the rear suspension. And because I didn't have the space to do things myself, I took the car to a man who did work. However, it has come to my attention that the work that he did was perhaps less than optimal. Whatever the case may be, it's time for us to redo the work. I have to replace these shocks, but there are a few other parts which hopefully won't give us too much trouble. You're a heavy girl. Let's put our jack stands in place. Slowly, slowly, gently. All right. Now that the car is safely in the air and we have avoided thousands of dollars of body damage, let's talk about what we're actually going to be doing. Now here I have a number of parts which are all going to be used to replace the rear shocks and components of the rear suspension. We've got the dust boots, we've got the spring perches, we've got this gasket, we've got a few bits of hardware and some things to build the shocks, and finally new shock mounts from our old friends at Corteco. Hopefully they don't break. And of course the shocks themselves. Now I would go with standard OE quality Bilstein. Of course could go for a B6 or a B8, or I don't even know if they make that for this car, but this is not a sports car. I mean, it's a nice driving SUV, but I don't need it to be a sports car. I need it to be comfortable. I need it to be able to drive on the highway. I need it to be able to carry me and any number of things that I may need to take with a trailer behind it without sacrificing ride comfort. So we have gone with the OE variant. First, to remove the wheels. Before we continue on the wheel side, we actually have to remove this panel here. Wait a second, I found that. Oh, god damn it. Remember that tool that I was talking about that I couldn't find last episode that helps remove these trim clips? I found it. It's at home. There we go. Hello. Well, that's just gone and rounded it. And that's too small. No, we're gonna follow the rules. We're gonna follow the rules. We're gonna do it right. Oh wow, I really hate that. I'm gonna interrupt here just to share with you a little bit of an aside about design targets versus design outcomes. BMW is particularly prone to this kind of errant thinking. So, what I have in front of me are two different types of trim clips. They're used on every car, from securing outdoor trim, inside trim, from making parts just snap together without using real fasteners. They're cheap. This type of clip is problematic sometimes because they can be a little bit tough to remove. Sometimes they will get stuck, sometimes they will break. But once you have the top part separated from the bottom, it will slide out at will. It is not an ideal design. In fact, it's something that I personally have complained about on this very channel. And so I'm sure that there was a conversation in Munich somewhere with some BMW engineer who decided to fix this problem. He said, what if we make the top part of the clip screw into the base of the clip? And as it screws in, it kind of expands the mechanism here, which actually holds the thing on. An excellent idea. Honestly, genuinely, I think it's a good idea. The issue is the plastic that's used on the heads of the screws is so soft that it is not really possible to unscrew it because it will just strip out. Because it's also threaded, it's not possible to just lever it out like you would with a normal clip. So what you have to do is you have to find a way to rotate the clip until it comes out, which can be really fun. Anyway, back to the action. Okay, and there we have it, folks. The shock mount. I like this. This is actually rather nice. So the shock is now loose from the top, so we just need to disconnect it from here, drop it out, pish bash bosh, Bob's your uncle. If you're struggling to get the shock out because it's never been replaced in its life, you can use the bolt that holds it in place to kind of wiggle it out. It's a lot quieter than beating it with a hammer. I mean, this is proper smoked. So putting together the shocks, there is a specific order in which the parts have to go on because otherwise it's not going to work correctly. So you have obviously the shock body itself. On top of the shock body goes this dust boot, or BMW calls it a gator. Once we've done that, we take the bump stop, or as BMW calls it, the additional damper, to line up with the gator, and then we put the supporting cup, slap, and put on the shock mount. Shock mount goes on like so. Then there is one final piece. Now we put this little piece on, and we tighten this. Shock mount. Ooh. Look at that. I'm sure that took 15 seconds for you to see. There's one final thing. The paper gasket. So normally, you'd use a socket like this one. Remember this from the oxygen sensor episode? Except that this is too big. So this is my solution. You take your vice grips and you put it around the socket and you use that to lever it in place. I don't love this approach. Where's my satisfying click? Remember when I sang praises about this torque wrench? I'm not so sure anymore. All right, new shock is coming in. Once you get it in place, let's tighten it up at the top first, and then we'll come back down here. Because this has a bushing in it, we're going to initially tighten it, and then we're going to, once we let the car off the stands to put it onto the ground, then we'll tighten it down all the way. You can use your floor jack once you've lined up the holes to help guide it into place. Everything's in place. Some love taps there to really show our appreciation. Bolt goes in, nut gets attached. We are going to tighten this, but we're not going to torque it until the wheels are on the ground. I'm going to drive it up a ramp for that. When we lower the load, we want to make sure that either the bolt or the bushing moves. There we go. Now even the dust boot is in the correct position. We don't want it hanging off the side because otherwise then it's not really doing its job. Earlier I said I was going to do the spring purchase as well. I still am, just not this time. And the reason for that is because to get at the springs, I have to remove a few of the control arms. And I checked them out and some of the bushings are not great. So I'd actually like to buy those bushings or control arms before I replace the spring purchase because I don't want to put bad parts back on the car, which I think makes sense.
After doing the left side, it was a simple case of rinse and repeat for the other shock. Now it's time to do some vacuuming in the back of the car too.
I had to step away. But now it's cold, so I'm gonna wear this jacket for a little while. Let's put the interior back together. What's this? Don't ask. Now here's a fun thing that you might not have known about the X5. In the toolkit is this bar. Now, when you just look at it, you might be confused. What does this do? I'll show you. Right over here is the latch for the tailgate. One merely places this bar into the latch here and into the mechanism here. Now what that does is it prevents the tailgate from moving. BMW, like I've said before, are quite clever sometimes. And this is a big car. You know what big car means? Big wheels and big tires. And a lot of mass in those big wheels and tires. And so trying to get a spare tire out of here can be a challenging process. So they have made it easy for you. There is this strap that comes in the car, and you can attach it to the end of the tailgate like so. Now, if that looks like a stretcher to you, it is a stretcher.
Welcome back. Let's merge the timeline. To be honest, I'm kind of nervous. What if I started and nothing has changed? Guess there's only one way to know. That startup sequence was pretty rough, but it's running now. It's idling. It seems to be idling okay. I need to torque up the rear suspension arm.
So I bet you're wondering, did that fix it? Does this car run? I mean, yeah, I think what we're dealing with here is a bad mass airflow sensor. As I said before, a mass airflow sensor is a diagnosis of illumination, unless you have an oscilloscope, which I don't. Everything else is looking decent. I think that we're left with the mass airflow sensor as a potential culprit. So I've ordered one. It will be here in a few days. I'll let you know on Instagram how that worked. But in the meantime, just cleaning the mass airflow sensor with that spray that I did, as well as all the other stuff that we took care of, it runs significantly better. I'm actually very happy with it. Instead of stumbling 90% of the time, it's 30. For the first time, I'm seeing that there is progress, which is exciting. But as we've started to do in these episodes, let's do a full sum up of what we've done. We cleaned the IACV, that's good. We cleaned the throttle body, it looks great. Shocks in the rear is finally riding nice. It still creaks because the spring pads and the springs themselves are kind of tired, but we'll be fixing that in a later time. Oh, and we replaced all the underhood plastics, and it's finally looking like an actual car in there instead of just like a half-finished workspace. I'm actually very happy about that. It hasn't looked like that in years. So as you can imagine, there's still a ton of stuff to do on this car, but I think that the fire on the platform that we were standing on is slowly starting to be extinguished, and hopefully with the arrival of the new mass airflow sensor, it will finally be put out. So I'm not going to leave you in suspense as to what the next episode is. In fact, I know this might sound shocking to you, but let me just bring forward with the facts here and give it to you straight. We're doing suspension. I am finally getting rid of the coilovers on the 540. I have all new suspension correction. I have mostly new suspension sitting and waiting for me in the trunk of the 540, and I am so excited to put it on. I cannot tell you how excited it makes me. So we'll be doing that on the next episode, as well as some of the other stuff that's kind of starting to show its age on the 540. At any rate, thank you to everyone who has been watching these videos, but particularly to these two names. Thank you to Graham and thank you to Andre for supporting this channel on Patreon. And if you'd like to join them, I'm not saying you should, but if you'd like to, the link is in the description. In the meantime, as always, thank you for watching, and I suggest you follow the Instagram for more frequent updates because, as I've said before, it's a lot easier for me and post than it is for me to shoot a video, especially a video long as this. And if you found that this video or any of the other videos on my channel are interesting to you, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. It helps me know that people are out there looking at these videos, which is nice. At any rate, thank you and have a lovely day, and I'll see you next time.